Well, Ron, it's like when I first decided to do coffee and crystals, I was about to graduate in Costa Rica in Nasara, and we were told to bring two crystals that we were resonated with. But we're not going to talk about crystals because I don't know you feel a certain way about that. But Marianne likes crystals. She
I,
planted the
I
seed.
love crystals. It just I have nightmares from inorganic chemistry. That's all.
Okay, well maybe we'll touch on that. We might not have. So cheers to that. Thank you. Thank you for so many reasons, but welcome to Coffee and Crystals.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So for everyone who doesn't know you, I would love to, in Ron's words, just give us a little background. You've got a really cool history. You're a businessman, dad, now pool school instructor, business owner of Marianne Wells Yoga School. So in your words, because I'll update my listeners in my words. Tell us who you are. Tell us about your life.
Well, I married Marianne in 1980, and I've been blessed ever since.
The
There.
best decisions of your life, Ron.
Enough about me. What about you? No, I'm kidding. No, I had a long career. I changed a lot as I grew and found things that I wanted to do. So, but I came through corporate, lots of different jobs. You can look at my LinkedIn profile and see all that boring stuff in the
He's
past.
very active on LinkedIn, everyone. As am I.
Yeah. Um, well, I'm not on social media, so I guess that is my outlet to
I know
put
you're
things
hard to
on.
tag. I just tagged Marianne.
Yeah, yeah. The other stuff I'm not, it's not that I'm not interested. I just don't want to put a lot out there just because. Because mostly because there's advertisements galore, and I don't see that as much with LinkedIn. So I enjoy
You
it
did
more.
tell me that was why you don't listen to a lot of podcasts because of all the commercials and interruptions. So my listeners can kind of give me some feedback there because I do interruptions, but it's usually just directing them back to me.
Yeah. Well, it's fine with me. I don't really mind. It's just I listened to a spiritual man from India for a while that everybody knows. I won't name him, but it became more and more as I listened, more commercials and more commercials.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was
back
all my
up.
fun.
So
Yeah.
you started helping Marianne. What was that
So
transition for you?
yeah, let me just I want to explain some things. So I mean, it's I think it's pretty well known that Marianne she started this whole adventure, if you will, teaching locally and then moving. We went down onto a couple of yoga vacations, and then one thing led to another. And next thing you know, I'm saying goodbye to my wife during rainy season in Costa Rica, and she's off, lugging everything down, training manuals, projector, boombox, by the way, boombox, Kadie, with DVDs or CDs in there.
Hey, Travis Matthew just branded a boom box that we sell in stores. Well, not just. We did it last year and it was kind of a big hit, throwback to the 90s.
Is this a commercial plug now?
Yeah, I guess I just did. We're a
Well,
lifestyle brand, men's and women's. Travis
yeah.
Matthew, check it out.
So when she started to spend more time down there, occasionally she would say, "Okay, could you?" You transition between jobs, you have some time, your wife's going somewhere. It's cold here, so I said, "I'll go down," and I'm carrying.
Where's here?
Huh? Minnesota.
Where's here? I got to see their house this last year.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you for coming, by the way. And so one thing led to another, and then I started to help her a little bit. I was between jobs. I had a really good severance package. I planned to take a year off anyway. So I said, I'll give you a year because she needed some help with her business. 1 year led to two. It was a lot to get things unwound. And then I went back to corporate for a little while. And then I decided I didn't really like it. I kind of liked the fact that when we left, and you've been a part of that experience 4 times now. When we wrap up, there's tears of joy, there's tears of release, there's happiness, and a lot of love being shared. In the corporate world, I just didn't feel that. It was even in my best years, it was typically, yay, now what are you going to do for me tomorrow? And I get it that tomorrow is the next day. Let's not, celebrate success too long. But I would have liked to hold on to it just a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
And so I was starting to make the transition out. And then I think the history is there. Our son took his life. I found his body in his apartment, in his home. And less than 11 months later, I had a massive heart attack. And the heart attack, it happened in the front yard. I collapsed immediately, didn't even feel anything, smashed my face, smashed my phone, smashed my glasses. And then I went 32 minutes without a heartbeat. And that experience, it's very difficult for me to explain it other than it was a very profound moment in my life.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could
bringing
put
tears to my eyes.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean to, but it was one of those things where, you see change in your life. Well, for me, I also, because I went 32 minutes, I had a fairly large bit of damage to the left ventricle of my heart. It was the widowmaker artery, but also I had a lot of oxygen deprivation to the brain. So my frontal cortex is kind of a mess. There's a big mass of dead part of it there. So I had to rewire, and with the blessing and the help of my dear wife and some great therapists and doctors, I managed to rewire to be able to speak. The thing that really came to the forefront was when the neuropsychologist, after 2 days of intensive testing, looked at us and said, you can never go back and do what it was that you did before. You can't process things well as far as the executive center. So I reflect on that today, and I look at that as a gift. And I look at it as a gift from the standpoint of a forced simplicity in my life. I know what my limitations are, and I try to minimize the episodes in which I have extreme multitasking taking place, especially in a stressful environment, because I know I won't react well to it. And so I knowingly understand how my mind works and also how my heart works. And before that, I never was that attuned to it. And having that blessing of being really attuned to the heart and the mind helped me really look at this whole thing called yoga. And I got really involved with it. But it really came a little bit later, or came before that, because I had had a couple of orthopedic surgeries. I've pretty well shattered both arms in different accidents 20 years apart. And so the second time came through and they said, well, why don't you do yoga? And my wife was a very good yoga teacher, but she didn't want to teach her husband. So I studied with a very good teacher here in Minneapolis that taught Ashtanga. And I'll never forget it. And you'll like this.
Pitta in you.
You'll love this story though. So I walk in and my first yoga class, and I looked at her, and she was a very accomplished woman. She was a champion cyclist. She spoke, I don't know how many languages. She had a few university degrees, and she'd been to India more than once. Several times. And I go in and I said, have you been to India? No.
I know Marianne has.
And I said, I'm ready for a good stretch. Yeah. So I could see it in her look. We talked about it, a few months later. But she came up to me in the middle of the class, and she just kind of whispered at me, and she goes, now you stay here in chair. We'll come back to you. We didn't have yoga mats. We were just on a wooden floor. And I'll never forget, I was there what seemed like an hour, but I bet it was only about 10 minutes, and I'm in chair pose. And there was just this gigantic puddle of sweat on the floor around me.
I've definitely been there.
She comes walking by and she goes, you can join us now. And so it was her way, in a very direct but yet indirect way, of teaching me a little bit about my ego.
It's funny that you say that. What the teacher learns, you teach back to the student. And one of my notes under ego to discuss with you is a great time to share this because it goes with your story, is it was in Boone, North Carolina. and everybody had straps and blocks, and we were in a forward fold, is the pose that we were learning in that moment. And sweet little Jenna comes over to help her friend and puts me up on pillows, gives me the straps, like helping me to like really feel the pose. And you came over and you're like, get rid of all that. She needs to feel how she's at. She needs to feel where she can be and where she's at right now. And those lessons in the moment when you're new to these lessons of beautiful yoga, I'm just like, that ego of mine was thinking, what a jerk. Like, weren't we learning how to use props and how to properly get your body? But that was not the lesson. You needed me to see outside of the yoga practice what I was holding on to, what behaviors in my life. And, there was a bigger lesson there than just grabbing the strap to feel the pose better.
Well, we take the lesson as it's, as we see it. So I'm not sure I was trying to teach that exactly, but.
Okay. So open it up. What was that lesson? I don't think we ever talked about it.
You were the fittest I'd ever seen you. We all made comments about how great you looked. But you beat up. I was
working for an Australian compression company. 2 times 2, hit, kill, crush.
You had, hit, kill, crush. So you had beaten your body up to get in that great shape. And you weren't in good yoga shape, and you were tight and you were sore and you were this and you were that. And so I felt that if you could put that kind of effort into getting into that great shape, when it came to how you looked in compression gear, that you could put the same kind of effort forth in your yoga practice. And I wanted you to.
Okay, well then I guess you planted the seed, because that's where I'm at right now. Even my friends that go to the same gym as me, they're trying to get me to go to their classes. And I was like, I've learned finally myself. I was like, I can't introduce anything else right now. I just need to make sure I'm consistent in my yoga practice. And when I know that I am that consistent, and they're like, yeah, well, you need to do other things. I'm like, I know myself now, because the second I do other things, I'm going to be boxing, I'm going to be cycling, I'm going to be doing all those things. But right now, what Kadie needs is when she gets to the gym, she needs meditation, she needs yoga, she needs restorative, she needs yin. So yeah, I did learn from you, but I guess I just didn't realize that until this conversation.
Well, given your lifestyle, I think it's important for you to have that. You're on the road a lot.
I am, and I felt it, and all I did was go to Orange County, which, from West Hollywood, it should just be an hour and 15 minutes away, but, it takes like 2.5 hours. And I was thinking this morning and just how I felt from just being in conference rooms and being out of my element for 1 week, and I'm all tight again. Mm-hmm. It was a great little tee up to be talking to my teacher, Ron, about that. Another thing that
you had a basket full of bobs down there, so that's a lot of bobs. It's a lot of tension to have all the execs around you. It is.
Yeah. No, you said something earlier that I was, I wanted this podcast to be, authentic and real. Like most of my podcast episodes with the guests I pick, it's really just a conversation. If I was going to call up Ron and needed some advice, that's kind of how I want this to flow. And I do think you said something about how you realized, yoga couldn't be in the corporate world. So your friend Kadie here is like, ruthless and relentless of like trying to change that. But it does also kind of create me being like sort of like in a playful, fun way, because everybody loves me, I think, but I'm always kind of like the brunt of the jokes, like, oh, leave it to Kadie to be positive, or oh, Kadie on her social media, or Kadie trying to promote her podcast on LinkedIn. Like, it's always like kind of like a jab. And I just feel like in the yoga community, it would be a little bit more like, I don't know, loving, approachable. I feel like it is different. It is different when you try to be like that yoga wellness coach in a corporate world. Cause, I ask my boss all the time, so have you been like still in your workouts? Have you been working? Oh, I haven't had time. I've been traveling. And it's true. Like, I'm always like, do you sleep? Like, his job, I just feel like takes so much out of him that it's easy to fall off. I was, like I said, in Orange County for 1 week, and I had been going to yoga every single day or having myself practice if I couldn't make it to a guided teacher that I respect, every day for the last 3 months. But this 1 week threw me off, missed it every single day. And I'm like, it feels like an excuse, but it's also like, no, it's like, it's a give and a take. And it's really hard to be showing up for your yoga practice and your yoga life in the corporate world. So any advice for me on that? I mean, it sounds like you just had to leave it. So I'm not there yet.
Well, again, my deal was sort of forced on us, right? And so that's a whole different scenario. You your commentary there reminded me years ago, we were in the desert in Arizona at a President's Club, and Marianne, wives came along, and so we had Los Lobos played. I mean, talk about a great party. And so my wife was very popular with the execs, and she danced with everybody. It was really a very cool thing to watch. And I said, so what was it like, dancing with all the execs? And she goes, oh, they're fun guys. She goes, but they're kind of mushy, like marshmallows, so I took that back to the office, and we adopted within our office in Minneapolis a more proactive approach to our health. And we carved out 90 minutes in the middle of the day to go and do our thing at a local gym.
Amazing.
Yeah. And because we knew from our health perspective, we were a better team when we were fit and got a lot of that stuff out. We could just,
and being able to make time, because I think we do have a gym at our home office, and I see a lot of people at it, but someone who's like more remote like me, and like the example of my boss, it's kind of on me to make it to the gym after work or before work. Yeah. So I think that's really cool that you were like, it was part of the day.
It was, and I think we functioned quite well as a result. And I can't say it enough. I think, when the body starts to go, I mean, the sutras teach us this, right? We have to focus on the body, because how are we ever going to elevate ourselves to thinking about other people or society in general and I've been through that myself with my own physical care and needs. If you wake up and the knee is killing you, or the heart is not working correctly, or you can't hardly catch a breath, how are you ever going to function at a higher level for work or to give back to society? You have to fix yourself first. And so that's where the whole self-care, self-love, self-discipline aspect of yoga comes into play, because Kadie, when you haven't been on the mat. I know when I haven't been on the mat. The mat is a way of reminding us every time that there's some discipline that's been missing in our life. And you can't shy away from it, right? You just have to go, like Marianne says, the whole bear hunt. You got to go through it. You can't go around it or under it or over it. You got to go through it. So,
yeah.
So,
hold up. We're going to take a quick break. I've learned to chop up my audio just in case something happens to the Zoom. Okay.
So back to your original comment as far as that. After my heart attack and my rehabilitation, I don't know where it came from. I mean, I really don't, but the universe rained down on us like crazy as far as giving us a lot of work to do. You came to a very busy training. We never asked for it, but we were blessed with it. And we were smart enough, after having gone through the first one that was a bit crowded with people, that we needed to have assistance. We needed to hire people. And we've always paid people. We never said, you're going to volunteer. I don't believe in all that stuff.
Yeah, which happens a lot in the yoga community.
Too much. And maybe that's the subject for another podcast, but
yeah, I had it on the subject of like business and yoga. I'm like, that's going to have to be a second one. We don't have,
probably. Yeah.
But now that I'm saying that, we don't have time for that. I'm like, maybe that would be like the root chakra of the problem. But anyway, go on.
No, but we hired enough people to make sure that people had a contact there, and we were extremely busy. I really apologize to those people that came to the first few ones that, after our son had passed, because we needed it, but we also probably weren't at our best in giving what we should have as teachers. But again, you do what you can in life, right? And you go through that. But we got really busy, and life was pretty good as far as the busyness and being able to afford to fly back and forth and hire people. and and so one thing led to another, and here we are. But at some point, I
You
was
have
just
the
again,
longest running yoga school in Costa Rica. You
it
still have that title?
it is because once Nosara Yoga Institute closed, they were there before us, and then they closed. Don and Amba Stapleton moved on. I think they're in California now. I don't know what they do, but yeah, we still maintain our presence in Costa Rica. It's a great country. It's given us a lot. We've given a lot to it as well, though. So we've taken a lot of people there that would never have been there before, and they've returned and brought groups and done business there, and it's a wonderful place. So, yeah. So at one point, I was just carrying water and setting up stuff, and then I said I can do more. And after my heart attack, I studied the sutras a lot, because there was a period of time when you go through something like that where you're not sure whether the soul is seated well within the physical body. You don't know where you want to be. And I think anybody that's been through that maybe can agree with that. It takes a while. And so I studied very diligently the Bhagavad Gita, the Yoga Sutras, the Bible. I looked at a lot of text just to sort of understand the meaning of it all. And it just started to make sense. So I told Marianne I'd like to start to introduce the sutras to people. And because of all my surgeries and therapies and surgical consults and what I studied in college, I know the body pretty well. So
Yes.
Anatomy was an easy one for me. Super easy.
That's not an easy one for a lot of the students, but I think you make it easier in a way. You bring it to life in a way with stories, and I feel like the reason it's easier to learn anatomy from you is you understand how complex it is, even though it's easy for you to understand.
Well, I've also been blessed to have, so we had the world come to us. We've students in 67 countries.
Yeah.
So I've been introduced to cultures I never would have seen. I've been introduced to professions I probably would have never interacted with. At a very intimate level for a few weeks. I've come to understand, that people go into these specialties, these professional specialties, and they focus on that one specialty. Even though they've gone to medical school, a lot of that sits in the background as far as active consciousness within their mind about what that is. Oh yeah, I studied that in school, but I really focus on the foot, right?
Yeah.
You got me from the ankle down, I'll tell you everything you need to know about it, but don't ask me about the elbow. That's somebody else's discipline.
Yeah.
And so
but they still have to learn it and, have education
sure.
on it to pass through the school.
It's just like lawyers. They practice in a specific area of the law. Yeah, they had to study the entire law, but they can't be expected to know. They know where to go and find it and study and come up with stuff, but to say, okay, on the fly, you're going to know this, it's different. So anyway, they've come back and told me, given me a lot of reassurances and some advice on how to present things as well. So we're blessed to have that come to us and teach me things as well.
Yeah. So I obviously met you on the bus on my first 200-hour training on my way to the Goddess Garden in Costa Rica. But where I really connected and met with Ron was this pool school that he's talking about. And pool school is where we discussed the sutras. And this is also where, in my notes looking back, where I would write down little Ronisms. And throughout my notes and throughout learning about the different sutras, you really got us to think about it almost the way you think about yoga. Think about it as in it's a contemplation place, but we would explain it back to the other students sitting around this gorgeous pool where we would get interrupted sometimes by the monkey mind and the actual monkeys in the tree, and little vitamin D. We would break up in groups. Sometimes we would get a sutra where we present it and really speak about it in our own words ourselves. And a lot went down at pool school. You know, yoga is emotion. So this, I feel like in my own personal practice and in my own study and notes is where I feel like a lot of emotion was coming out. You know, I would quote you in my notes. I would write down my own emotions of what came out from other people's stories and presentations. And, you know, there was one that I wrote down that you said is get rid of that stinking thinking. There was quotes that you said like, eat the cookie, don't eat the cookie, really talking about karma. Where do you feel like people get stuck in learning about the sutras?
Well, that's a good question. So first of all, I think it's the way the subject matter is presented. I think that they see Sanskrit and they go, okay, wait, there's a resistance to that. And I get that, right? I think that, you know, when there's a difference and I think my friends from India would probably agree, there's a difference in the way that subjects are presented from an Eastern mindset to a Western mindset. Mm-hmm. And I never wanted to pretend that I could approach something like that from an Eastern mindset. So what I chose to do is to bring it from, and again, like you said, I tell more stories than I do anything else, because it's the stories that people can relate to. And a lot of times they're stories on the fly, and they're created because of the subject matter of what somebody said or how I observed somebody, or, you know, what was going on with the environment around us and how distracting it was at times. You know, I mean, the parrots came in and you couldn't hear anything because it's, you know, mm-hmm. 4:30, here come the parrots, and they're noisy animals.
Yes,
right?
They are. And just the placement of where you're sitting too. Somebody on the other side of the pool, you know, your perspective or your senses of, you know, listening are going to be different. But outside of pool school and out in the real world, that's how it is. You know, you see and hear things differently. But go on.
I think that their difficulty lies in, I thought yoga was just poses.
Mm-hmm. Which is still a thing. I literally was telling my circle of consciousness, that I, you know, was excited about interviewing you. People who don't know you, I think like the yoga school community is like really jazzed about this. So we've got high expectations. But some of the first questions were like, oh, is he really fit? Can he do a lot of poses? I'm like,
I'm beat up.
He's beat up, guys.
I'm beat
up.
Can't
do a lot of poses though. Kill crutch.
Yeah, but it's never been about that with me.
Yes, but it still seems to be to so many people here in LA.
I ran marathons, and you know, the damage that marathons do to your body over the years. I mean, you feel it in the legs and in the hips and
the knee for me.
The knees, yeah. So all my past injuries come home to roost. And I always tell people, every time you add the next decade to your age, you start to feel even more. And now I'm starting to feel things that happened to me at age 6. So they come back to you, right? I fell out of that tree. I swung like Tarzan and fell on my back, and I feel exactly where I hurt the back at age 6, right? So these things come to happen. But you know, look, I don't want to be a naysayer about yoga. I think it's a wonderful industry, but you know, the idea that years ago, I had a teacher that was very good. She was deep, she was powerful, and she was motivational, inspirational, and she could Sanskrit the shit out of anybody. I don't care. I'd put her up against anybody, even the Sanskrit scholars.
Awesome.
But she left. The United States Olympic Committee hired her to train the cycling team when Lance Armstrong was there. She went to Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Not in yoga, in cycling. My watch is wanting to talk to me. And then they found another teacher to come in. I took her class because she was admittedly very, very attractive. But she also knew 3 gals that had retired from Cirque du Soleil.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, So you've paid to be in a class that's going to be, 75 minutes long. And the last 25 minutes of the class, we're going to do pretzel logic. You guys can watch. And that I went to the owner after 3 classes and I said, I'm not going to pay anymore for this because I paid to be taught. And she took it to heart, I think. But I said, I want to be taught. I want to learn. I want to practice. I don't want to sit down and watch somebody do these impossible poses. They've been
It happens all day long. Even, I attend a lot of yoga instructors that I think are great, but then that is continually happening.
They're not great.
Yeah, you're right. I was in a class last week and I was like, ooh, I got to tell Ron about this. He was teaching side crow.
Yeah.
And he was doing the position. He showed us show yoga how to do side crow. And then everybody clapped when he's on. He was like, no clapping in yoga. That's not what it's about. And like, I literally LOL'd out loud though. Like, well, then why didn't you come over and teach us how to get in, teach everybody how to get into side crow? Like he got mad at the room for clapping at him, but he also it was like a 7-minute presentation of how to get into it.
That's a long time. I mean, I think his intention was probably there.
Yeah, actually, yes. But I was like, we're not all there. Because he,
right.
He could have used me as an example. He could have sat by me and been like, oh, if you're really tight in the thoracic spine, it's in your abs. It's, he could have come over and used a body to get into it is my feedback.
Well, and remember, it was Desikachar in the movie Yoga Unveiled that talked about the words of Patanjali, and that was to teach according to the ability and the inability of the capability of the student. And so, if the focus of the teacher, and again, the object of meditation for a yoga teacher is the student. There should be nothing more for that teacher to be focusing on than their students. Okay. Mm-hmm. That means you don't do the class. Sorry for those of you who do the class. Because when you're doing the poses, you're performing, and your students are actually having to look up at you, and you're taking your eyes off of them. How can you ever find where you need to provide assistance and to them when you're doing the poses? And I know that flies in the face of a lot of what people do today. Mm-hmm. But I'm old school, I guess, in that way, because I was actually never taught by anybody who actually did the class. Okay.
Yeah.
You just didn't do it.
Which is good because
there were teachers and there were students, and teachers sometimes demonstrated poses if somebody was new, but they focused on the students, right? And so again, the object of meditation for a yoga teacher is the students. And I think that when a teacher doesn't find how do I heard that said before? It's important for a yoga teacher to study philosophy, because there will be times in a class where they'll find moments or they'll find tidbits of inspiration. How did she put it? Tidbits of inspiration while in the moments of perspiration to share and inspire the class.
Yeah. And that's honestly, I wish I knew the yoga instructor that kind of had that unlocked for me, obviously from years of being taught by Marianne. But prior to Marianne, what got me to Marianne was a teacher like that at Pure Yoga in New York. I just felt like she was really speaking to me. She was speaking to the class, but I really heard her. And, that's when, teachers and say these things and students end up crying. There's a lot of different reasons why emotions are coming out that way. But that was the day in that class that I knew I wanted to be a yoga teacher, because it wasn't about how tight I was and that I was going to inspire somebody to be, a yoga body like me. I knew that I had a story and a gift and a lesson that I could teach others. And I think really great yoga instructors do that to others.
But I will say, having said what I just said, I think it's great when people come together in community and move their bodies, and it's okay if they just say Om at the end, Namaste, and I mean it's better than a lot of things that people could choose to do.
Yeah,
but I feel like there's so much more, and I'll tell you why, Kadie, because I've been blessed. our student bodies, and you've seen it, 99% women, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Which it was the opposite in the beginning of yoga, right? Wasn't it all usually men that were practicing yoga?
I wasn't there then. I'm not sure.
I guess, yeah.
You'll have to ask. You have to go back
It
in a
could be a
time.
conspiracy.
Yeah, I think so. But um, you know, we still have the human condition. We still have this, and for a lot of people, they're still trying to unlock the secrets of the mind and how they can adjust and look at our society today. And I think yoga is not serving the potential that it could if people would approach it from the aspect of, and I don't mean we're going to have to go into these long drawn out rituals. I mean serving the students and having those moments of inspiration, so that they can speak individually to a student. And I'll bet she was watching very carefully, and there was something she saw in you, and she dropped that tidbit in. Now, it could have been for the, and again, shared with the general class, but it could have been Kadie's specific message. And again, we all receive these messages from the standpoint of where our mind is at.
Yep.
Okay.
When the student is ready, the teacher appears.
So the way you look at yoga for anybody is your yoga. That's your yoga. Now, I'm not sure if it's really real yoga, trademark R, but that's your yoga. And so our goal in yoga is, how do we assess where your yoga is today and where we take it to tomorrow? Okay. And a teacher should be, I remember the wise words of George Feuerstein, okay? The yoga scholar from Germany, but he said that if you're not providing an opportunity, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm sorry, but if you're not providing an opportunity for your students to grow and learn, you're not a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
Okay. And grow and learn doesn't mean necessarily, I've flipped myself up and I look at how I can twist my body. It can be. Mm-hmm. Can be, but again,
that is, something that I want to aspire to and get back into my practice where I can do more like Ashtanga type things. But that's not like the end goal of why I go to yoga, but it is part of it, to be physically strong.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we, like this last training we had, we do our little thing with the, where we assist people who don't do or claim that they could never do a headstand. It's merely like Marianne's got it. Oh, it's right here. It's, using a device to get somebody safely up into a headstand. We use the chairs. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you happen to be in that training.
I was in one where I was I almost said the example, but the student you chose to go into the chair and teach it when you were first in my 200 hours.
Okay. But she had an emotional breakthrough, because here it was, this moment where I can't do this, and I can do this, right? And it was profound. It was deeply moving for everybody to witness it. Kadie, she quit her job.
That happens to you guys a lot after yoga, don't they? Or they quit their job to go to yoga school?
No, it's usually afterwards. It's
okay.
Or legal. Again, the idea is not so much, hey, they're convincing people to do this or that. It was the feeling that I'm in control of my life and I decide.
Yeah. Okay. And I think for me in Costa Rica, my first 200 hours was planting the seed of is it Maya? Maya, where the illusion, or when you think that everything's permanent. I think I lived in that mindset most of my life growing up. This is what the cards I was dealt, and this is what it is, and I can't do anything about it. And then when you start to, learn your yoga, you understand that, manifestation is real, and it's not just being woo woo and putting something out there. It's setting intentions and then doing the work.
Yoga always promises that you have to do the work, but the whole concept with Maya is that, and it's the grand illusion that something is going to remain constant, and the only constant is change. Right. It was in his writings in meditation that Marcus Aurelius said, however you said it, the one constant is change. Our life is what our minds make it, right?
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of I made a posting recently on LinkedIn, about the whole mind thing, and Rumi saying, "Why do you stay in jail when the door is so wide open?"
Yeah.
Lots of Rumi quotes and all of that. But basically what it means is that we deal with the situation in the moment. Okay. And then it's gone. Okay. And so what we've always tried to do when we bring people together from around the world and we're together.
Hold on. You deal with the situation in the moment and then it's gone.
It's gone.
Mind blown.
But it's simple, right? If you were to annoy me, I mean, not.
I think I have. Couple times.
But I would deal with you in the moment, right? In this particular way of thinking, I would deal with you in the moment, and then it would be gone. I wouldn't sit there and let it fester and then go around and talk to a bunch of people about how awful you were or how annoyed I am with you. And that's what happened.
I think people who are listening are probably like having those aha moments, like,
well,
I mean, guilty of doing that.
Same here. We're all human beings, but the idea of going back to, these principles, if you will, is over and over again. The more that you exercise that muscle, the more it becomes a part of who you are. The more you leave something, the more distant it becomes. Okay. And so I really appreciate it when there's something not going right in the training. I always say, please don't suffer in silence, because if there's something that I can do in this moment right now to make it better for you, I want to do it. The last thing I want to see is to read it on social media 5 months after you've left.
Yeah.
And it's coming out and it's been added to and amplified. And, I can only do what I can do, and I still make mistakes. So does everybody else. Right. And we apologize for our mistakes and we move on, and you release and let go, and your life becomes much simpler that way.
Yeah, that is a great point.
And that's why.
Hold on one second.
How are we doing on time? Oh, so and that's why it becomes a powerful tool, and that's why people oftentimes they'll leave relationships, they'll quit jobs, or they'll stop messing around and they will form the relationships or go get the jobs. I mean, it doesn't have to be a shedding.
I feel like that's what happened with me. Every year that I spent time and training, and every month that, I was focusing on yoga, things got better in my life. And then, people, even now are like, oh, you make your job look so easy. I'm like, it is discipline of being a yoga practitioner, because my life is definitely not easy. And showing up for yourself in a yoga way is not easy, but it makes life easy. Like another easier.
Okay, I'll go with that. Yeah.
Because if there's a day that I am not in routine, it's not my best day, and it won't be. I mean, it just, how I feel, and I just think how yoga kind of gets you to the mat is also how you're able to get back to the mat.
Yeah. So the promise of yoga is your work, but the idea is if you focus on the process, okay, whether it's the rituals, the daily plan, the daily schedule, but you focus on the process, we don't have a lot of control over the results. I kind of make fun of that whole results-oriented individual aspect. I think I put it on a resume years ago, right? But I think
I forget that sometimes too.
You never know exactly what it is that's the crux of your success. You could flip a coin sometimes. I mean, we were very successful for several years, and then we were not so successful. Well, COVID hit, right? And so you just never know, right? You're not going to overcome something like a worldwide pandemic. It's going to shut your business down.
Yeah.
So but you focus on the building blocks, the process, and from that, you hope that the results will flow forth.
Yeah, but I would think that even in your business, though, someone that, has the idea and the process in place, easy is just not a good word because I was about to use it again. Like, it's just someone like you and Marianne who have yoga surrounding your life, you do have the ability to pivot in a way that somebody that doesn't have these practices in their life couldn't, and things feel heavier.
Well, we're self-employed, so we don't have to look for, the big company to approve, deny, like us, don't
Right.
like us, right?
Yeah.
So when you're in control of that, and that, for me, that was um, the great thing of coming to work with my dear wife, is that we're in control of how much we work. We're in control of hopefully what revenue we can bring in. But it's being able to call our own shots. And I think that's empowering. And that's one of the things,
Yeah.
before I leave, that this podcast I want to talk about, is the real reason why I got involved, is that as I looked at what Marianne was doing and how the business was emerging for her, I saw all of these women coming through, and again, some men, but mostly women coming through her training and going forth and teaching yoga in a way that was different than what they had been doing before. And as I saw that Marianne was putting her footprint out across the world, little by little, through her students, and making this impact. And I wanted to be a part of that, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to be a part of it. I saw this as something that was significant, both in their personal lives, those who came through,
Mm-hmm.
but then in the lives of their families, their children, their relationships, and empowering them to have launch their own businesses. I mean,
Yeah.
you work for a big giant corporation, but you got this side hustle, okay? And so
Yeah. And you guys planted the seed for me. The Kadie way came from you. You're planting that seed. Marianne even, thought of the Kadie way. Like I said earlier in the podcast, I I think I wanted to do a podcast, but I was more focused on so many other things, the Vata brain in me. But that came out of yoga school. As soon as I graduated that next month, I was like live on the podcast. So you do that for your students. It's more than the practice. It's being people able to step into their power and be a little bit more in tune to their purpose, which was something I wanted to talk about. I think purpose stresses people out, and then other people are like really motivated on like living their purpose. But
Yeah.
either way, I think having the idea of trying to focus on your skill sets and your strengths is something that you guys pull out of individuals from learning with you guys.
Thank you.
I think of all the things that, all the conversations I've had with you in particular, I remember I also in my notes, and just, I didn't even have to write it down. I remember those moments that, you get that compliment from Marianne and Ron. Not that you guys aren't giving compliments all the time, but you're not just flinging them out either. When you earn it, you get it. And I remember my last, I guess, what was it? I think we had to, do a meditation for the group right before I graduated. And I don't remember being nervous, but obviously you're nervous. Like, I'm not trying to take that away, but I didn't feel nervous. Like, I was prepared, and, I was rooming with Jenna, who was very nervous. So maybe that was me just trying to be like cool. Like, she's really nervous, I'm not. I got up there, and my goal was to sing. I was going to sing to everyone. We were going to chant. And I just lost it. I like cried all the way through. And I just was like thinking, I don't want to hear the feedback. I obviously screwed it up. Like, I'm like crying. And then I started like kind of convulsed crying. And I was like, wow, what is this? This is embarrassing. But I like the Kadie in me like wanted to keep going. So I like sang the rest of my song. And I just remember Marianne going, the magical thing about you, Kadie, is that you just keep putting yourself out there. You keep showing up, and you've got courage, and just never lose that. And I'm like, getting goosebumps again, because that is what you guys do for me. You turn on the lights, you give me that feedback when I need it, and you put on the punching bags for my ego, but you also remind me that like, hey, just because you screwed that up, please don't give up. And that is definitely a gift that, I come back to often, even when I'm not talking to you too. So thank you.
You're welcome. That's a nice story. I like that. I
Yeah.
mean,
And then one time you told the group that I was a nice balance of, this was when you first met me, the 200. You
oh
gave me
no.
as an example of a nice balance between kapha, pitta, and vata. And now looking back, I was like, I don't know if you would make that same comment after the years of knowing me, but you did say that to the class when you were first introducing the Prakrtis.
Well, I've heard you describe yourself as a Vata, but I have you actually been?
I haven't, which is nuts. I need to get
You
one
should
done.
go.
I think my main is kapha.
You should go because I think there's going to be less Vata than you think.
Pitta, definitely.
Yep. Only
Lately, I'm so pitta that like my body's hot all the time. Like I used to always be cold, which was maybe why I was thinking I was vata. I just live in a vata city, so I think that's sometimes why I think I'm vata. But like when I lived in
oh
New
yeah.
York, it was like all the time, and Hollywood can be like that too. But I feel very hot and pitta lately.
Well, I want to make sure I send out the love to the yoga teachers in LA because I don't mean to disrespect or anything when I was describing that. I think
Yeah.
people teach to, and again, you have to make a living, so you teach to what the clientele want to practice.
Mm-hmm.
But I know there's great yoga teachers that teach differently there as well. I just they're not so much on social media. you
Yeah,
know, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, to end this podcast, bringing it back, we know now that the seed was planted of coffee and crystals at yoga school. But another thing is just the way I structure it. I always want to talk about something physical, something mental, something emotional, and something spiritual in every episode. And I learned that with all the many episodes that I'm learning that we need to have to talk to people about is the different bodies that you have. And that's how I structure each show. Make sure we talk about something physical. We're going to talk about something mental, emotional, and then bringing it back to being a spiritual podcast. And I always remember Ron as the chanter. At yoga school, we'd be chanting, we'd be dancing. You loved that shit. You'd be leading the pack. So in my notes, which I, just reviewed those last couple of weeks, I had put a little note that it must have come from either you or Marianne that chanting was an example of talking to God. And I don't remember hearing that before, but it was a good contemplation moment for me. And I was like, wonder if Ron feels that way. So since you introduced chanting to me, what are your thoughts around that note that I took at your yoga school?
I think that's probably a Marianneism.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds more like her than myself.
Okay. Well, good. So that's Marianne. Now you're meeting the two, everyone.
Yeah.
What would
But
your take be on chanting?
well, I do believe there is a sacred aspect to chanting. I don't necessarily, especially in a foundational training, because I don't know where people are coming from as far as what their belief systems are. And I work very much overtime during the training. I'm here to introduce a subject matter, a topic of discussion, part of the required curriculum put forth by Yoga Alliance. But I want to introduce this as something to contemplate, right, when it comes to philosophy. And the same thing would go with chanting. I mean, as simple as it just feels good.
It does.
Yeah, to come into community and to share those shared vibrations within a group is very powerful. There's a harmonic vibration that gets set up. We feel it not only through our jawbones.
You're making. I'm like this
We're
feels
exercising
good.
the diaphragm, learning control of the breath a little bit better. And Desikachar, forgive me. He actually believed that chanting was the gateway to deeper states of meditation.
Okay.
So it is a
Heard
way.
that from you guys before.
It is a way for us to quiet down the fluctuations of the mind. Some of those chants are intense. As far as you have to keep that same repetition, you have to keep the same pace, the same scale, same tone. And so is a way for us to focus. And that's, for me at least, the value of chanting for me. I wouldn't take it as far for myself personally, as far as a kirtan, but I have chanted from me to this laptop in front of Krishna Das and then Jaya Tal. Yeah, I mean, I've been right in front of the guys chanting, and I mean, we're swapping spit back and forth practically. And
so spiritual.
It's spiritual. It really is, because those guys are the real deal, right? So, yeah, I mean, in the aspect of the 200-hour foundational training, I look at it more from the standpoint of being able to reach a community, but also into deeper states of meditation. Yeah, calming down the mind a bit more.
Yeah,
I remember the vibration, the vibration going around through the circle when we were done.
Yeah. And it can be something, even somebody who's super confident can feel a little nervous to do something like that when you're not used to it. But then keep putting yourself in that energetic frequency and then noticing the difference is also where a lot of that work is. I remember when I was a little girl, and, my listeners have heard a lot about my past as growing up. But one thing that I did intuitively to calm my anxiety that I'm learning of is what it was when I was a child, and fear and depression, is I used to go into the bathtub and do the humming. And just intuitively, as a little girl, no one was teaching me this. I didn't have like kid therapy. I would just immerse myself in water, and I would, and just that, and then come back up for air and go back down and do it.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, it's just when you learn things like this from you guys, throughout the years of different tools that I have in my tool belt now from learning at Really Real Yoga, and then thinking back to times when I was younger and didn't have this education, and how that is also an aha moment for me. It's like, okay, well, there's something here, because intuitively my body and my mind was teaching me this before I knew it was a thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, this is just a long time coming. I appreciate you. But before we end this call here, what's next for you and Marianne? What can my listeners, learn or, watch for if they're interested in studying at Really Real Yoga School?
We have 7 spots left for July. It's July 19th through August 2nd down in Costa Rica. We're at Finca Austria. It's on a lovely mountain overlooking the Nosara River Valley and the entire biological reserve down below, and the ocean on the horizon. It's majestic. I wake up in the morning and look out from the veranda, and it's so beautiful. There's nothing else there. I mean, there's nothing else in the world other than that moment. And so there's 7 spots. You can also
see that on his LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You show the lifestyle very well.
There's 7 spots left. It's, again, our foundational training. It's 200 hours. So check us out, mariannewells.com. And it's MarianneWells.
Yeah.
So it's right there. You can see it and decide for yourself if you can find the time to come on down and join us.
And what I've learned on the spots they pick is, like, even the best photographers, it just doesn't do these spots justice. It's like just something else being there in that energy, in community, learning really, really yoga in these spots. They pick them with intention for sure.
Yeah. I thank you for having me on. And by the way, let's do Sutras and Shit some more.
Yes.
We got a lot to cover.
Take 2.
We got a lot.
Scratching the surface.
Exactly. Kadie, your hair looks great.
Thanks. Yeah, I feel like maybe we should just have our own podcast show. Kadie and Ron. You're like, ooh. We'll do it again, though.
We'll do it again. Yeah.
Thanks.
Always good to see you. I love you.
I love you. Thanks for your time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. I don't know how to turn this off.
Yeah, just hang up.
Bye.